Hey, I wanted to talk a little bit about running Delphic Oracle on a Mac, which can be done now. I had this originally as a Windows program that I started writing around 2003. Um, Actually, the original code started before that. Uh, we can click on Launchpad and launch Delphic Oracle like this. It'll take about 45 seconds to load on my iMac, which is an i5 with an AMD fairly decent processor for graphics card and 8 gig of RAM. It's booting now. Uh, so as we wait for it to boot, the main thing I wanted to talk about was that this program started as a program that I started writing with zodiacal aphesis in 1997 and was released at the end of the year. And for a couple of years, I didn't do much of anything because I thought that there would be another program out that didn't come out. Eventually, I came out with Delphic Oracle in 2003. So this program has been in the works now for 13 years, and it's finally now available native Mac. Now, what I want to do is show you how to do the basics, like set up a chart when you first start. You'll see on the left hand side a bunch of already present charts by default. These are just retained charts that are like saved from session to session. You can highlight a bunch like this and then click on retain, and then you click yes, and it'll just overwrite with your, and since I select all of them, it'll bring up the same list next time. Now, starting up a new chart, you can go to Delphic Oracle and New, and then you'll look at, you'll see a whole, new chart entry dialog come up. First thing you can do is type in the place name, but you can tab between the fields. I'll just leave it as natal chart, but you can switch between horror area and event charts. It's basically used in database categorization. Now, with the date, you can set the date. I'm just going to use today. With time, you can use, for example, I don't have to use the seconds on here. You can go back to minutes, or you can even just do 12 p.m. like this. Let me get rid of the rest of this. And it will still recognize the time. This here is a button to give you the current time. We'll just shorten it up to 12 noon. And the place name. Now, there's an important little tip in terms of working with the Terran Atlas that is important to know because it's such a huge database. It has 8 million locations in the geonames portion, another 5 million in the MaxMind portion, which are, the MaxMind is actually split up between two different databases, one Unicode and one ANSI code that preserve different spellings and character formats for searching, so, and allow you to look at different, type in different names, for example, for the same location. So there's important to realize that there is a fair amount of duplication going on. When it comes to large metropolitan areas, it's very likely, especially in the geonames database, there will be several locations listed in that city. For example, in New York, you might have a location for the fire department, and for the New York Library, or for the City Hall, or for any number of post offices or police stations, or et cetera, or parks, Central Park. You can type in just about anything, but the thing is, without some sort of trick, which I'm going to show you, it's going to be very difficult to work with. People get frustrated. What you do is you type in an asterisk after the place name. For example, if you're interested in the metropolitan area like Phoenix, then put an asterisk, and then Arizona, and then I hit tab, that will bring up the atlas. I can also click on this button here, but look at how many different places are in this database. We have codes here that will show us, what exactly are in here. I don't know how many, but we're looking at probably over 100 locations in this small area of Phoenix alone. Now, it does happen to be the case that you have just Phoenix listed alone here, and it would have brought it up. But you might have other areas that don't have it listed like that. I've noticed that in some cases, like for Washington, D.C., for example, there's no Washington just by itself, District of Columbia. There's several items within that metro area, but it's not listed just by itself. It's like, Washington City, for example. It's almost like this is following the standard of the old Rand McNally standard, where they put in these atlases Washington City of, or something like that. So it's important to use the asterisk whenever you're doing place name searches in large metropolitan areas. If you're sure of the spelling and you've done it before, then you leave it off, but that's an important little trick to know. Now, the other thing that you want to be aware of is with the time zones. I did quite a bit of research into this in the last few years, and I used to think that time zone history was a lot more solid than it really is, and it turns out that it really isn't. The Olson Time Zone database has about 500 different people in the world working on it, which is the one reason why I settled with that pretty much. There are a lot more eyes looking over the accuracy of the data, but it does have a drawback in that dates prior to 1970, the database only tries to be accurate for the 500 or so zones in the area. And it might not be as accurate for outlying areas, but you shouldn't make the assumption that any other databases are going to be different. Some will try to claim greater accuracy, but it's such a chaotic mess that I suspect that a lot of it is just guesses. So I would be highly skeptical and very careful whenever you're setting up birth charts. So it's very important to realize this. I don't want to belabor it too much, but it really is something that astrologers need to be aware of. So don't just assume that, hey, if the one program shows 18 Aquarius rising and the other one shows about 2 degrees Pisces rising, then automatically, my program or the other program is incorrect. It simply is a matter a lot of times of time zone selection, and there's a lot of disagreement out there as to what actually is real. So you're going to have to do a little bit of research in this if you're going to take it seriously. If you don't, you're going to make errors. So it's important for any really professional astrologer to be aware of these kinds of issues. I want to show you a little trick here. If something is a little bit out of place here, I didn't get all these fields in complete order, but you can use the mouse scroll button by rubbing up and down on the mouse to get the place to fit a little bit better in the graphic. Now, there's also other search modes. There's locate, which will give you, in this case I'm filtering, which will just return the ones that fit the match. In this case, Phoenix, Star, Arizona. The other modes are you can browse by country, and you can locate. Locate, what it does is it'll include the entire database that you're opening, but focus into the one that you selected within that database so that you can look around and browse if you want to. Would be the main reason for using that. So anyway, seeing that this is what I want here, I can just click that and click OK, and it'll bring it back and it'll bring up this with the proposed time zone. If you want to edit the time zone, there are a couple of ways to do it. I could either go back into the Terran Atlas and select a zone here, and there's a list of zones here that I can override with. There are about 500 of them, so it's quite a few. The other thing you can do is if you want to accept the default zone but override it with a simpler version here, you can click here and it'll bring you a list of zones here. It's not really important what this abbreviation is, it's just a label. For astronomical accuracy, the only thing that matters is the math. So you just select a zone here, in this case Mountain Standard Time, and then go OK. And then it will internally show whatever you want. This here is a label, so if you just try to edit this, you're not really editing the zone. Okay. In the end, you select what kind of status you want for your birth source, in other words, how accurate. So you click OK, and it will draw the chart. We don't need this open anymore. And it'll show what we have here, 12 p.m. So we've got a chart, and we're showing various items. We can hover over the glyphs to see the data underneath, and there's even data for the ascensions, for the signs, and so on. Now, there are lots of other features in this program. You can also go to Hellenistic view, medieval view. You can also change all these pretty much as flexible as solar fire when it comes to display. You can just show the glyph. You can show the glyph in the degree, or you can show the whole list. You can also change the planet colors and sign colors, and whether to show the bounds or terms. You don't have to accept any of these. I can just right click on a wheel theme, and I can switch to something else. Let's go to something with the fixed stars, zodiac band exclusive. Double click, and it should bring it up, and there it is. So now I got one with the fixed stars. I can see there's Jupiter there, then there's fixed star there. You can hover over it to see what they are. Spica's right there. Arcturus, I think, would be right here. Yep. So, this is how you get the data for the fixed stars anyway. If I don't like what I want to get back to, you just go to double click on a theme here, and it'll bring it back to where it was. This is the one that I was using before. Now, this other thing that I wanted to point out is once you have a chart open, you can change the analysis. You can go through these different analysis panes, P&A Wizard, P&A Report, all the way down this list. Even also, there's another really advanced utility. I'm not going to do this right now because it's Terran, which is a 3D, 4D actually, because it includes Time Lords, and it's actually a really interesting module for astrocartography. So, but it involves intensification of Time Lords and the lines that define the meridian and so on. Now, with these different lists here, if we go to the Time Lord list, we can see we have a bunch of options for this. We can select any of these different Time Lord procedures. Typically, I work a lot with the zodiacal releasing from Spirit or profections, but I'll start with Spirit here. And then you can just go through the list if you want to see what's going on. Further subdivisions, just double click. And then to double click here, You find everything that's going on for that date. And then now, when I did this, what happened is it updated the chart with auto-generated charts. There is an option here, view auto-generated chart, and we'll bring up your predefined settings for what you want to show in each wheel. In this case, this program has the ability to show what I call time wheels, which is another way of cross-referencing the various Time Lord systems with each other, so you see that directly in the chart and see what transits are happening exactly at the time of the onset of the period. In this case, you can also hover over this. It shows perfect ascendant. In this case, this is the Valens daily modification. And then there's the annual perfection, the ascendant. And then there's the perfect daily according to the medieval algorithm. And then there's also the monthly perfection. And these perfection pointers here, you can see what they are. They're also, but they are different in that they're not quantum jumps. They are basically incremental measurements. For example, we got the perfection of the ascendant, which is 18 Aquarius in this case. So we have here what we go on with is 18 Aquarius, but if you go far enough later in the year, that incremental pointer is going to go up to a different point. And so you can see where it is, annual, at 8 degrees of Capricorn, as it went later on in that period in that same year, starting out from about 18 of Sagittarius, which means it's probably about 9 months later. Anyway, I'm just going to briefly show you how to change what's showing in the auto-generated charts. And you just go to Options and Auto-Generated, and this here represents the order. You've got all these various Time Lords on the left that you can select, and progressions, tertiary progressions, solar arc, whatever. You just drag it over or double click, and then you can drag them up and down on the list. You have to click and highlight and let go, and then you can drag, and then it'll put, now we've got Venus perfections going in there. I don't really want that, so I can just get rid of it. If I want to, say, put zodiacal releasing fortune, or get rid of it, or you just do that. We go down the list. You can put it here. Get rid of this one, and put transits, let's say, on the outside or something like that. I can do any of those. For now, let's try something like put fortune on the inside. And then we click Save between the two lists. It's important, if you see two lists like this and you want the status of their list to stay the same between sessions, to click the Save button. I often put a Restore button to go back to what it was before, which if I click it, it will restore it back to what it was. So now we've got here zodiacal releasing fortune, transits, and perfect ascendant. So we'll click Save. And then we'll go here, and I can go Update, and it will rearrange so that now transits are in this wheel and zodiacal releasing fortunes on this wheel. So if I want to go back, same thing, edit, chart design, or edit options, I should say. And I put zodiacal releasing fortune here, click Save, and double click. I can bring it back like that too. I don't have to click up here, which this is the current time if you want to do it like that to update. And then you click there, and it'll shift it slightly to show what's going on at that moment. So in this case, notice that everything went over here, and that's because I went back to the original chart. So anyway, this concludes my presentation of this very brief intro to Delphic Oracle 9 for macOS. Thanks for listening.